Hello friends, welcome to SalesforceCRMAnalytics video session 213. So basically we will continue in this video about the SAQL. So in today's video, we will understand about the meaning of each of the statement in a very basic SAQL statement. So it will be a very basic SAQL statement and we will try to dig deep down how, like what is the meaning of each of those lines. It's very important. It's, building the base concepts for this SAQL. And once that base up is built up, I'm quite sure you will enjoy writing codes via SAQL. Okay. So what I will be doing is I will be taking the help of this uh, guide only. Okay. So as I mentioned in the last section as well, that ensure that this guide is there with you. Ensure it's the latest one. As of now, of course, it's the time I'm shooting the video, it's winter 26. I'm taking the reference of this. And maybe what I can do is I can zoom in a bit. Okay. Now let's jump back to straight what I want to explain you. So we will read it a bit by bit and try to understand. So firstly, let's say, let me open a data set and go to the SQL mode. Let's say I take this example. And now I go for something like, okay, I'm not going for anything. Let it be as it is. Okay. So we will understand like what it basically says in this document. Most actions you take in analytics result in one or more SQL queries. Every lens, dashboard, and explorer action generates and executes a SQL query to build the data needed for the visualization. So it's the lens, and basically that lens we can make it as a part of the dashboard. Okay, so that is something they are mentioning, which I mentioned in my previous video. Analytics evaluates queries, widgets, and layouts to enter a dashboard. Behind every widget is a SQL query, which is sent the query engine for execution. So whatever dashboard you are building at the end of the day is nothing but a mixture of the SAQL itself. Okay, if you are taking all the lens and whatever lens you are taking, that is a mixture of the complete SAQL. So for example, we build a few dashboard, right? Uh, okay, let's say, if I take this example itself, let's say account dashboard. So we took the help of lens, and whatever this lens is nothing but a mixture of SAQL itself. Okay. The resulting data is passed to the charting library, which renders it using the corresponding widget definitions. SQL is influenced by Apache Pig Latin syntax, that is PIGQL syntax, but their implementations differ and they are not compatible. I mean, that's what the syntax is all about. That is what they are saying. Okay. Now, as you can see, how the components fit together. So basically, when you are building a chart, auto facet steps adding using the builder. So in the dashboard, I'm just adding the steps, all these steps, right? Resolve mustache templates and custom bindings. Now, basically, this is the whole query which we are building. And at the backend, like this is the generate SQL for each step. So you're building this query, okay? And when the runtime happens, basically this query engine is there. So from the data set, it executes the query and the generate SQL is being taken up. Fine. Dispatch queries to the wave engine. So in the backend, the wave engine actually has that query build up. It build the results and finally return them as JSON. So of course, in the dashboard, we will come to the JSON concept, but it is more about the dashboard, like how it works over there. But as of now, let's stick to the SQL only. Okay. So developers can write SQL to access analytics data either via the analytics REST API or by creating any SQL queries contained in the dashboards. We will go for the editing part, like how we can edit the SQL queries. Right now, we are just dealing with the basics so that you get a complete idea of what this SQL is all about, and the base concept is completely clear for you all. A SQL query loads an input dataset, operates on it, and outputs a result dataset. Each SQL statement has an input stream, an operation, and an output stream. One input stream is always there. So for example, if I come to this lens and if I go to the SQL query, this is basically an input stream. Load is always, whenever you see that word load, that is nothing but the meaning of input stream. Okay. And then as it's saying, that it has an operation and output stream. Now, output stream, whenever you see this for generate, is nothing but an output stream. Okay. So always remember that load is nothing but an input stream. The generate part, wherever it contains, is nothing but an output stream. And of course, you have some operations in between as well. For example, this is group by all the limit. Okay. That is the operation. Statements can span multiple lines and must end with a semicolon. Now, if you see over here, each of these lines is ending with a semicolon. If you don't give a semicolon, basically it will throw an error that line won't get executed. Okay. Each query line is assigned to a name stream. A name stream can be used as input to any subsequent statement in the same query. So it means that every line which you are writing, that is assigned to a name stream. Now, what is the name stream? For example, you have this variable q. Okay. So that the variable q which is there, that is nothing but a name stream. So each of the line get assigned to a name stream, and it helps like in further lines to ensure that that can be used as a subsequent statement. Okay. As you can see, it's used as an input. So for example, in this first line, as you can see, q equal to load recipe account, that is assigned to this name stream queue. Now in the next line, I'm referencing the same queue and I'm grouping by all. Okay. And that's how it goes about. The only exception to this rule is the last line in a query, which you don't need to assign explicitly. So maybe the last line is something which you don't need to assign. That is fine. But other than that, everything else is needed over here. Okay. So that is about the SAQL part. Now let's jump back to how we can, like, what is the meaning of each of the statement in a very simple query. Now, as you can see here, this is a very simple query, just like mine, or it's just that they have a different data set. Otherwise, if you see, it's just like mine. Okay. Now, what is the first line? So in our case, like this is the first line, right? Q equal to load recipe account. So what is the meaning of this line? We will decode that. Okay. We will understand step by step, and in a way we are decoding it. This loads the dataset that you choose when you created the chart widget. You can use the variable q to access the dataset in the rest of your SQL statement. So basically, it will load the dataset which we are using, and with the variable q, we can access that dataset in the rest of the SQL statement. So in this case, basically, this loads. In my case, this loads the dataset. It loads this dataset, okay, and with the help of variable q, I can access this dataset in the subsequent lines. Okay, that's the way we can mention it. Okay, so that's about the line number one. Now it is saying group Q by all. In some queries, you want to group by a certain field. For example, economy. In our case, we didn't specify grouping when we created the chart. Use group by all when you don't want to group the data. Now, when you are not grouping the data at all, fine, you just write it as group Q by all. That's it. Okay. But if we kind of group by certain things, then what will happen is basically it's going to group by that particular field. For example, let's say under bars, I just go for industry. Okay. And if I just remove the order from here. So for example, I just clear the sorting. Okay. And here, if I go for this SAQL, you will be seeing that basically that particular industry is getting grouped by. But if you're not grouping by anything, so if you're just mentioning the count of rows or sum of annual revenue, basically what will happen is it's going to group by all. Okay. That's the meaning of the second line. So when you don't specify any particular field, it basically group by all. Okay. So when you don't want to group data, the simple state fact is that you group by all. So we can write this group q by all when you don't want to group. So this part, what I can say is, maybe I can copy it from here itself. Use group by all when you don't want to group the data. Okay, that's it. As simple as it can get. Now, the third line, q equal to for each q generate count as count. This generates the output for our query. In this sample, we just count the number of lines. So you will just count the number of lines, I mean the number of records in a way you can say, the number of records which are there, that will help us. So if you have an Excel sheet, if there are 10 records, so it will give you the count of those 10 records. Fine. So this generates the output for our query. So as I mentioned earlier, whenever you see this generate, it basically generates an output. So this one generates an output for us. Okay. And finally, this limits the number of results that are returned to 2000. Limiting the number of results can improve performance. However, you want to queue to contain more than, you can increase this number. So definitely it helps you to give the limit. So basically, if you limit it, it improves the performance of the query. But if you want to give more than 2000, we can again give it for sure. That's not an issue. So that's the fact about limit. Okay. Now, if you remember, there was a line which it said that the last line is not compulsory. So if you don't write q equal to limit q, if you remove that q, then also it is going to run. Okay. So that was something which was mentioned on this particular line. If I just scroll above, so you always need that particular variable q, okay? But it's saying that the only exception to this rule is the last line in a query, which you don't need to assign explicitly. So for the last line, you don't need to assign, but otherwise you always have to ensure that basically you mention that variable q each and every time. So let's say I delete this one, and if I run the query, okay, and let's see if I just don't give the q over here. So as you can see, whenever the last line is there you can explicitly, like you can remove the variable. But other than that, before that, you always need to have that variable. Okay, that is for sure. If you don't give the last line, it's assume that of course that is the last line, and that's how it's being referenced. So that is the only exception. Otherwise, you have to ensure that you write in a step-by-step process. Okay. So basically, if I just open it once again, if I go for count of rows, so just to give you a complete revision of this SAQL, like the meaning of each of this line behind a simple SAQL statement. So the first part is it loads the data set. A variable is being assigned, a named variable is assigned over there, okay, as it's written over here as well. I mean, how you write it? Yeah, assigned to a name stream. You can make it say it as a variable or a name stream. That's the first step. Now, when you are not grouping by anything, it's going to just group Q by all. That's the default of it. And for generating, you just generate an output, and you can limit as well to improve the performance. Also, the last line, you don't need to explicitly mention the variable Q. So that's how it is. And this is the whole structure. Okay. Other than Q, you can mention any other variable also. Okay. So for example, you have this option called control F. Now, let's say instead of Q, if I can go for any other variable. So let's say instead of Q, I want to go for A. Oh, sorry, not one. It will be A. Okay. So there's this option called replace all. If I'm hovering, it's not coming up right now. The text is not showing up, but this is the meaning of replace all. So if I click on this one, the Q will get replaced to A. And if I run the query, this is also going to run. Okay. So you can mention the name stream can be any variable. By default, it comes up as Q, but you can mention A, B, C, D as well, or any other letters for that matter. Okay. So that gets there for an input stream. And with the help of that input stream only, you are going to reference it in the subsequent lines. So for example, like here, if I write something like B, okay, something like B, or let me do one thing. Maybe one shortcut I could have done is A. Let's say I replace A by B. Okay, but the first line I just write it as A. Okay, so I just write the first line as A. Oh, one mistake is there. It's replacing every B by all. Okay, that's fine. For each. So A equal to load, B equal to group Q by all, B equal to for each B. It will be generate count B as B, and B equal to limit B 2000. Now if I run this query, it's saying to use the recipe, add them. So I have to add the recipe. So first recipe, I mean the first name of the data is reference to variable, but after this, not able to understand each of the line. So of course it has to be B as well. And if I run the query, it's going to get executed. Okay. Uh, okay, this will be as actually. Okay, this will be as if I run this. So anyways, I hope this part understood. We will check on this in the later section as well. But this is the basic structure of an SQL and the meaning of it. So yeah, we will meet very soon in our next video.